Affinity Photo has a feature that allows you to make a selection based on a sampled color value. Here's how to use it. Firstly, if we look across on the Layers panel, we need to make a selection from a pixel layer. Now, if you've been doing some compositing, like I have here, the easiest approach is simply to merge your work into a temporary layer by using Merge Visible. And we can do this by going to Layer and choosing Merge Visible here. Now we can just click into the text for this newly created pixel layer and call it Selection. So now we'll go to Select and choose Select Sampled Color. So what we can do with this feature is we can click drag around or single click to sample the color directly underneath the crosshair. So for example, we could select the yellow tones in the sky here. Now on the dialog here, tolerance will adjust how many similar color values to include in the selection. So if we reduce the tolerance, fewer values similar to this yellow-orange tone will be selected. Whereas when I increase tolerance, we start to include more similar values. Now Model changes the color model used to determine the tolerance. We start with an RGB cube model, which is based on the additive red, green and blue color model. This is very much a machine color model. Compare this to CIE Lab Cube, which is based on a human perception model of color. With this option, we tend to find that more similar color tones will be selected, and so the tolerance slider is more sensitive. We also have intensity, which is based on a calculated grayscale intensity. This looks at the overall intensity of the pixel values rather than their color contribution. Finally, we have alpha, which does nothing for this image, but it is useful for making selections of matted alpha areas for cutouts and other compositing workflows. For this example, let's move back to the CIE Lab Cube model, select a yellow area, and choose a tolerance of around about 20% and click Apply. So now that we have this active selection, we can create a mask from it. Let's go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer and add a Brightness and Contrast adjustment. And we can also deselect, which will hide the marching ants here. We can do this by using Command D on Mac or Control D on Windows. Then I can just bring the contrast up and maybe increase the brightness slightly as well. So this is quite a powerful tool because we can isolate adjustments, filters, and even vector and pixel layers to very specific regions of color. Here is a great practical example for using this feature. So in this astrophotography image, I've got quite a lot of blue tones in the dark background areas here, and I want to perhaps take the color out of these areas without affecting the main deep sky objects. So like we did with the previous image, the best practice is to create a merged pixel layer from which we can make our selection. Once again, I'll just click here and call this layer Selection. Then go to Select and select Sampled Color. This time we will stay in the RGB cube model and I'll just single click on an area of the background. I can adjust the tolerance until we're not sacrificing too many of the color tones around the deep sky objects here. Then I can click Apply. And now with my active selection, what I will do is go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and add a Vibrance adjustment. Then I'll deselect, once again using Command D on Mac or Control D on Windows. And finally, I'll just reduce the saturation, like so. So I'll just close this dialog down, and we can see here very clearly, if I hide or uncheck the Vibrance adjustment, we now have our blue background back. So this adjustment is masked primarily to the color tones in the background. And it hasn't greatly affected the color of our deep sky objects here. So there we go, a quick look at the Select Sampled Color feature and an example of how you might use it in a practical workflow.